All right, saviors and demons. Now, I know some of these clips are going to be cut and put up on YouTube, so I got to kind of go easy on what I'm saying here. Saviors and demons is, I would say, the core coin of how we were able to break into objectively tracking personality type. And that is because we did not look at functions like how everybody else does, where it's preferences, or I'm a user, the dominant function and the tertiary and all these little stupid terms, right? We saw from going through some really hard times in life that these functions were what we were, as people, like blaming the problems of the world. And this happened as we started logging personality types. We would objectively type somebody, which would take hours or even days. And after a few hundred people that you've sat here and you've learned all about their life and watched tons and tons of videos on them, you start to see some damn patterns. You start to see everybody's kind of saying the same thing. And it gets very embarrassing because all these fears that I have that I think are so real, and this person's out to get me, and I suck at this, and this insecurity, and you don't even know, and this is impossible, and I can't, all this bullshit I've been telling myself for fucking decades, right? You see these other people saying the same damn thing. I mean, so we're getting video interviews of people crying in their bedroom and really, getting very open and honest about their life. And we're seeing this at mass scale. And we start to see that for the IJ, the Antichrist is chaos. So they'll get very into conspiracies and afraid of the government's out to get you and the world's going to end, and it just gets very amped up and very panicky. Then the EP is the reverse. They're afraid of the cops. They're afraid of the man. They're afraid of somebody coming to control them. Don't put your SIFE on me. And then the EJs, those are a lot easier to see because they're so outgoing and extroverted, and then they just crash and melt down because they have no identity. They don't know who they are. They've exhausted themselves, and they hate themselves, and they feel like shit. And then the IPs, those take a little longer to see because they're so damn quiet. But you start to realize as you watch several hundred videos of IP people how fucking delusional they are about their identity in the tribe. So everybody's fucking nuts. And it's not that your third function and your fourth function are the less. It's like, no, your two demon functions, they may be your bottom two and they may not be your bottom two. Maybe your second and fourth for some people. Anyways, these are the things that we blame in life as the fucking worst problems in the world. What I'm going to show you today is how to use this powerful energy to track personality type. And here's something that we used early on, a little lesson that we used in a little small group here. All right, let's get started. So when you're sitting at a coffee shop and you're eavesdropping, as you always do, and you're listening to the people behind you, you're kind of dialing on their conversation. Why? Because one of the two people are starting to get a little bit animated. And so they're standing out from all the background noise. Now, what is background noise? Background noise is kind of like this. We'll do a little graph where it's just kind of these little seismic waves where it's up and down and everything's fine. And then you'll start to hear these spikes. And you'll hear one of two spikes. It's either extremely high, positive energy, or extremely low. And every time the lady spikes in a very positive and you don't even know, and this was the answer, and it was so amazing, and this happened, that's the savior function. It's usually the first function because it's just this over-dominant of high conscious positive energy. You wouldn't believe it, Sally. I found the fucking answer to the world. And then the opposite side, when the conversation gets serious, it's usually about 45 minutes in because they've exhausted all their social bullshit. And now they're really getting to the good stuff. And you don't even know. And then they did this and now it's hitting the low spikes. What's that? These are the demon functions. And as you're listening to the conversation, say they're talking about something you don't care about. They're talking about makeup or something. And so you're ignoring all the details and you're just listening to the general concept of what they're saying. You're just tracking the energy. Like, okay, so every time they are talking about this, she is spiking up. And then every time she talks about that, she's spiking down. And so the first function is seen when the energy gets high and it spikes up. And then the last function, the demon function, when that low spike. That doesn't always come out. So that's why I say, like in a coffee shop setting, for a lot of people, you won't even hear it. You got to wait for that conversation where somebody starts freaking the fuck out. And just because they're freaking out doesn't mean that's their fourth function. Everybody can freak out about everything. But you're tracking this consistent behavior. And YouTube is great because you can get access to hundreds of videos over the course of years of someone's life. And you got to find the video people that are not editing out a lot of their hard times. So when they're crying and they're talking about depression and suicide and all the rest, they have lots of these videos up over a period of years. And so you can really start to see the real person. And what you'll start to see, for example, this is one of the most clearest ones we saw early on, was the EPs, especially the lead SEs. They're so full of anxiety. Like that was a huge word that all the lead SEs kept saying. I have so much anxiety. Why? Because they can't see what's coming next. Demon NI. And then the IJs are always complaining about panic attacks. They feel like they're getting trapped by chaos. And then the EJs are complaining about self-worth, etc. And again, this isn't 110% consistent, but the point is, like, these problems are not spreading out evenly over a spectrum. Certain problems are clumping around certain types. Why? The imbalances. Let's jump into how to do this wrong. You don't figure out what somebody is by running through a bunch of anecdotes or preferences or abilities. Somebody who's empathetic doesn't necessarily mean they have FE. Everybody can do everything. People have not been able to objectively type for a couple reasons. One is they're just running in. They're either self-diagnosing, which is a pseudoscience douche move. You can't type yourself. You can't test yourself. Do you go to the doctor and do that? Hey, doctor, I'm here. I'd like to take my own test to figure out what's wrong with me. And the doctor's like, oh, okay, I'll get out of your way. I don't want to be liable, so I'll stand back. And it's a lot of work to really diagnose and figure out what is exactly the baseline, what's the problem, where's it going off, can you repeat the pattern, can somebody else see it? That's a lot of damn work. So doing these drive-by testing things of I'm going to take an online test or pay for a test or read these profiles, it's not that that doesn't work, it's just it doesn't work at scale. For most people, it's not going to work. For some people, and I know, of course, for you, it worked for you. Of course, I know. But at scale, it breaks down. That's the problem. All right, so what can you do about all this knowledge of saviors and demons and all this stuff? This is the scary shit that Carl Jung was warning everybody about. He called it the shadow. So the first step, and we'll be covering this in future classes and videos and all the rest, so don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. The first thing you can do is really track others. If you're an IJ, you got to know you're an IJ. You can't mistype yourself here. If you're really an IJ and you're all freaked out about controlling chaos, you got to go find some other IJs and watch them and watch how they cause so much chaos and pain in their life because they're over-controlling stuff. If you're an EJ and you have low confidence and not sure who your identity is and you're spending all this time martyring yourself for everyone else, you got to go find real EJs in your life and see how they're causing so much hell and tribe hate on themselves from overworking those functions. The point is, you got to be able to, you can't see yourself. This is a black abyss of space. You can't track a lot of these stars. You have to triangulate. You can't see yourself if you're an IP, but if you're watching 5 other IPs and you kind of add them all together and divide by 5, you have a pretty good goddamn idea of what you're doing. And that takes a little bit of time to really see that, soak that in, understand other people's patterns, and that will start to reveal to you, oh, therefore, I must be doing this in my life, even though I don't see it, even though I don't feel it, even though I want to tell myself I'm not. The math says if I'm an EP and every other EP out there is struggling with this feeling of being controlled and pressured by the tribe, and I'm feeling that, then maybe, just maybe, all these things in my life that I'm blaming, maybe that's really, that energy is actually coming from me, and therefore, I can do something about it. I can get out of it. And that's what we'll be covering down the road here.